Did you take the other copy of the statement by Yeah, that's right. I just summarized it to one page.
Yeah, good. Lindi, SG, Sistogo, Dakota. In what? Yes, this one. Kize. I'm not going to go to yeah, CTS is linked. CTS. Good day, members of the media. Sorry. Good day once more. Maybe let's start by first conveying our apology for the late start of the briefing. You'll appreciate that we had quite weighty issues to attend to and make sure that we give you the best possible context so that when you report back to the good citizens of South Africa, you give them a thorough and fair understanding of what the ANC was seized with. We had an NEC from the 17th to the 18th, and then from the 19th to the 20th, we had the Lekgotla. So the Secretary General is going to present the statement. Before that, let me introduce comrades who are here. It's Comrade Lindy Zulu. She's the chair of the International Relations Subcommittee. Comrade Dakota is part of our media relations team as part of the ANC Communication Subcommittee. Mama Nkozana Dlamini Zuma. She's the Minister of COCTA. And you know that we've got issues that have got to do with the rollout of the district development model. There was a commission specifically dealing with those issues, which he's going to talk to. Comrade Enoch Kodongwani is the chair of the ETC. And Mama Togo Didiza, she's also deployed as Minister of Agriculture and Land Reform. She's also going to have to talk to those issues as they were discussed at the Lekgotla. And the Secretary General of the African National Congress. Secretary General, can you please present the statement of the National Executive Committee for both the NEC and the Lekgotla? Once more, our apologies.
Well, thanks very much. Without any waste of time, I'm sure we sincerely want to pass our apology for starting late. Let me first start by passing our condolences once more to Mama Florence Mnumzana, Mandwa Khoza, Briggs Ndweni, the Chief Whip, Nelson Mandela, Dr. Nkwashu, the daughter to our former Treasurer General, Comrade Matthew Posa, and the young learners who drowned here, as well young learner Enoch, as well as the young man who drowned in Qwaqwa. The National Executive Committee of the ANC held its annual General Lekgotla from 19 to 20 January, and the Lekgotla brought together the ANC, NEC, alliance partners, ANC deployees in national, provincial and local government, as well as strategic centers in society, including business, SOEs, civil society, as well as traditional leadership. The ANC Lekgotla held robust and constructive discussions aimed at developing a concrete program to implement the priorities outlined in January 8 statement. And you remember those priorities the President talked about, which were identified in the January 8 statement: building a capable state that serves all the people, building a united and cohesive society, investment, jobs, and inclusive growth, an effective land reform program, eradicating poverty and improving people's lives, education and skills for a changing world, social cohesion and safe communities, and a better Africa and a better world. And that's why we brought this panel here, to give you more details in terms of what we have actually prioritized moving forward this year. The meeting also took place at a pivotal moment for our country, when our economy is facing severe challenges and many of our people continue to enjoy great hardships. The Lekgotla was preceded by a two-day ANC meeting of the National Executive Committee that also focused on most important issues of concern to the nation: the issue of economy, the issue of jobs, state-owned enterprises, and building a capable state. Of course, the triple challenges of unemployment, inequalities, as well as poverty, and in particular, strengthening of our local government sphere. The National Executive Committee did get a detailed reports on the state of SOEs, very comprehensive, Eskom and SAA in particular. And they deliberated extensively of approaches to ensure that SOEs deliver on their developmental mandate, and that the ANC policy on the role of SOEs is implemented. And therefore, the ANC has long held position that public enterprises need to play a developmental role, especially through the production of goods and services. And therefore, there should be a proper assessment of the public enterprises' strategic importance for the developmental agenda. And their mandate must be clear, costed, and monitored consistently to ensure successful restructuring programs. As a group, 25 national SOEs and DFIs control around a fifth of the national capital stock, with Eskom, Central, Transnet accounting for 3/4 of the total. And they employ almost 175,000 workers directly, with around 50,000 at Transnet and Eskom. And transfers and subsidies to the SOEs account for around 4% of the total expenditure, with the two first going historically to PRASA and Sandra in terms of debt guarantees. The 25 national public enterprises represent 14% of the national debt, with Eskom alone accounting for 11%. So the public enterprises as a group face significant financial challenges, which arise in part from the broader economic slowdown, which reduces their revenues, and in part from inefficiency, high debt incurred to maintain investment over the past decade, and in some cases from corruption that is pushed up their cost structures. Detailed inputs will be provided in terms of Eskom and SAA. I think I shouldn't get into the detail in terms of the press statement. The team is here to talk about this. But we have further agreed that we need to ensure that there is improved performance. We investigate all historical contracts impacting negatively on SAA, including the lease of airplanes and evergreen contracts. The socio-economic mandates of the public enterprises need to be strengthened and costed, and government oversight structures should be streamlined and respond more rapidly and rigorously to challenges as challenges arise. Where necessary, the institutional design and business model of the public enterprises should be reviewed. For this purpose, the strategic centers and enterprises that are under financial pressure should be prioritized. Government support is needed to maintain the national resources and capacity that are embodied in the public enterprises. It must, however, be contingent on them doing more to meet the needs of our people affordably and efficiently. It cannot be a blank check that permits continued waste, inefficiencies, and in some cases corruption at the cost of our citizens, producers, and society as a whole. SAA, we have emphasized, and we are emphasizing this point, that should be retained as a national airline, which will require substantial restructuring, and Cabinet should take the operational decisions needed to achieve this. Eskom new management is supported in taking the measures required to ensure more reliable supply, especially by improving the quality of engineering across its operations. And Cabinet should assist by fast-tracking additional affordable sources of electricity supply, including, amongst others, gas, clean coal, regional partnership, as well as renewables, in order to provide Eskom with the space it needs for repairs and maintenance. We're talking here about mixed energy. The ANC, we have actually talked about our resolutions of conferences over a period of time, as well as a document which also guides us ready to govern. The NEC agreed on the following steps, that the following steps must be prioritized: that the commercial and developmental mandates of SOEs and SOCs should be clearly outlined and stated and reviewed where necessary. The institutional design which will support their developmental mandate should be examined. There should be greater and more effective attention to the operational efficiencies and integrity of SOEs, as well as ensuring that people who are fit for purpose are appointed for various positions. We should therefore look to embark on the consolidation and rationalization process of all SOEs. I think the President has talked about almost 740. So we need to rationalize, consolidate, and rationalize that process. And in terms of conference resolutions, we have agreed that, as the President has said when he was speaking to all of you and South Africans, that we don't need any political interference in operational matters other than intervention in the case of mismanagement and possible company failures. In terms of the medium-term strategic framework, the Lekgotla received a report on the implementation of government medium-term strategic framework for 2019 to 2024, which seeks to give effects to the electoral mandate given to the ANC as set out clearly in its 2019 election manifesto. The MTSF is organized around the 7 priorities of the manifesto discussed at the June 2019 Lekgotla, so that we improve coordination and integrated planning and accountability. And we have talked about integrated resources, building social compacts and accountability, with emphasis on the district model at the center. The overarching goals of the ANC government from 2019 to 2024 were articulated by President Ramaphosa at the State of the Nation address in 2019, and I think the President emphasized the following: decisive progress in the coming decade on tackling poverty, inequality, and unemployment, and that no person in South Africa will go hungry, grow the economy at a faster rate than the population growth rate, and that many young people, we must create more jobs, almost 2 million in employment, better education outcomes in schools, with every 10-year-old able to read for meaning, and end violence. That's what the President said during the State of the Nation in 2019. State-owned enterprises and economic growth strategy. The Lekgotla agreed on the need to prioritize economic growth as South Africa's overall priority in order to accelerate job creation, particularly for women and young people. Investment promotion efforts must be intensified, and barriers to investment must be removed, and growth in key jobs creating sectors must be promoted, including but not limited to manufacturing, tourism, digital economy, mining, construction, renewable energy and industry, and creative industries. And furthermore, SOEs need to be stabilized and restructured in order to be able to effectively contribute towards economic growth and transformation. and the process of rooting out corruption must continue so that state structures and SOEs serve the people. It is also agreed that strategic partners must be engaged on SOEs, and it must also be emphasized that a just transition for South Africa must be accelerated. It is underscored the importance of improved levels of service delivery and the capacity of the state. Lekgotla recognized that the operationalization of the African Continental Free Trade Area promises great opportunities for industrialization, infrastructure, development, economic growth, as well as intra-Africa trade. And Lekgotla called for the formation of a pact for investment, growth, and job creation, uniting government, labor, business, and communities. And Lekgotla identified the following priority areas: agrarian transformation and land reform strategies, the mining sector, energy security, innovation, tourism, manufacturing and trade interventions, the quality of investment and outcomes that are being achieved, as well as the strategic functioning of state-owned enterprises and companies. The Lekgotla agreed that in order to grow the economy, the following measures needed to be implemented in order to stimulate increased investment, boost consumer demand, and lower the cost of doing business. And the following measures must be prioritized: ensure that spectrum release should lead to lower data costs, to realize the extension of access to online service and put more money in consumer pockets, and easing of visa requirements and related changes to encourage tourism, and the inflow of needed skills into South Africa should be accelerated. Implementing the integrated resource plan and improving energy security. Creating increased investor certainty in key sectors such as automotive, mining, and gas exploration, and improve governance at SARS and law enforcement agencies, and urgently crack down on tax avoidance and illicit capital outflows. Manufacturing continues to be a major sector of South Africa's economy, and that government should continue to support and boost the manufacturing sector as it seeks to transform the structure of manufacturing. Build new growth sectors such as renewables, energy, creative industries, aviation industries, including the use of advanced ICT. And furthermore, the Lekgotla called for the strengthening of BEE and other policies to transform racial, patriarchal, and monopoly ownership patterns in our economy. A renewed emphasis must be placed on localization in all areas of economic development, and taking strong action to deal with criminal activities of people who describe themselves as business groups that go to infrastructure projects demanding 30% stakes, threatening violence. And we said government will explain properly the nature of the 30% set aside, and strengthen government and SOE's procurement, and leverage private sector procurement to support local enterprises, township and village enterprises, as well as black industrialists, and support all initiatives at reducing or eradicating youth unemployment at national, provincial, and local government. The Lekgotla welcomed progress with the implementation of the resolution of the 54th National Conference calling for the amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution. And it was agreed that the ANC must embark on an intensive program to popularize and explain its position on the amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution. The ANC calls upon all South Africans to participate actively in the forthcoming public hearings on the amendment to Section 25 of the Constitution to provide for expropriation without compensation. And the Lekgotla endorsed the recommendation that the power to determine issues related to expropriation of land without compensation should, in the law in the Constitution, should reside in the executive. And the Lekgotla endorsed several programmatic priorities for the forthcoming year, 2020. Some of these include the allocation of land to smallholders and subsistence farmers who are already working the land, as well as those areas where there have been evictions. The Transfer of Land in terms of Transformation of Certain Rural Areas Act to remaining communities will also be prioritized, and redistribution must be used to benefit those claimants who missed the 1998 cut-off date. The rights of women to own, inherit, and use the land must be emphasized in relation to security of tenure. And concerted efforts must be made to encourage late claimants to opt for land rather than financial compensation. And improve post-settlement support measures will be implemented to ensure that restituted and redistributed land is brought to production through post-settlement support, and to improve integration and coordination of the land reform program. And special attention will definitely be given to women and young people. The development of black farmers will be prioritized through training, capacity building, the provision of blended funding, revisiting share equity schemes, and agreements with other countries. And the question of urban land will also be addressed to de-racialize the towns and cities and transform apartheid spatial patterns through measures such as expropriation of well-located urban land and the targeting of derelict buildings in cities and towns. We won't any longer allow hijacking of buildings in our cities and towns. The challenges of climate change will be prioritized through the promotion of sustainable and smart agriculture, as well as assisting farmers with adaptation to climate change and effective water use through, amongst others, alternative technologies. And the following legislative and policy measures will be prioritized: finalization of Communal Property Association Amendment Act, review of the State Disposal Act, and the Government Immovable Asset Management to streamline national land administration, as well as the finalization of the agricultural sector master plan. And we'll have timelines in terms of our implementation. In terms of social cohesion and safe communities, Lekgotla identified a number of measures to build social cohesion, which is about the well-being, development, and safety of communities. Therefore, the ANC calls on government to provide comprehensive social protection programs. Lekgotla agreed on the following priority actions: ensuring greater alignment and cooperation and coordination of the justice, crime, prevention and security cluster, and the modernization of systems in the cluster. Implementation and speedy review of the National Crime Prevention Strategy, strengthening the moral regeneration movement, and strengthening partnership between government and civil society, including the eradication of all forms of substance abuse, which is a major contributing factor in the perpetration of violence. And within the context of South Africa's sustained program to eradicate gender-based violence, government must strengthen its programs to combat sexual harassment at workplace, including ratification and implementation of international instruments such as the ILO Convention 190 on eliminating violence and harassment in the world at the world of work, and strengthening of the border management and all other instruments that seek to protect our territorial integrity, as well as by ensuring that the passing of legislation on border management is fast-tracked and implemented, and promoting urban safety through the eradication and formalization of informal settlements, including reclaiming of, as I've said, of hijacked buildings, and implementation of safer cities and community strategy, and enhance programs aimed at rehabilitation of offenders, and ensure consistency and uniform position on illegal migration and xenophobia. And we call upon all ANC structures and civil society to work with the police to combat the rampant levels of violence in the communities across our country. And as I've said, one of the things we have said in January 8th statement, one of the priorities is strengthening of local government and the implementation, focus on the implementation of the district development model. Government The ANC Lekgotla recognized the importance of ensuring that local governments becomes more effective and serves the people better. Lekgotla noted the significant progress that has been made in establishing structures of local government and expanding access to basic services since 1994. However, the remaining backlogs have been difficult to eradicate, due in part to increased population growth, institutional weaknesses, budgetary and skills constraints, unplanned migration, as well as the legacy of apartheid spatial planning. The Lekgotla also recognized that some communities have experienced regression and deterioration in basic services due to infrastructure failure, aging infrastructure, lack of investment and implementation of operations and specifically maintenance, vandalism, theft, corruption, and culture of non-payment of services. And that's why we are calling upon our structures and South Africans and government to embark on a campaign for those people who are indigent to go to relevant authorities to register so that we know who's indigent, who's not indigent. And we are making a plea to those who can afford to pay for services to do so. In order to deal effectively with these challenges, Lekgotla agreed that the following actions must be prioritized. Number one, the Department of COGTA and National Treasury must implement a targeted local government program focusing on governance, financial management, and service delivery, as well as infrastructure. But the emphasis has been on maintenance of our infrastructure. Minimum competency framework for deployment of councillors should seriously be considered. Basically, we are talking about all public, all our public representatives. Consideration of the introduction of performance management system at local level to improve performance and accountability, and address the political infights, instability, whatever, killings, through working with law enforcement agencies and mandating structures, strengthening community engagement and feedback on municipal performance, strengthening human resource systems, and enforce compliance with MSA and its regulations on competency requirements, acting firmly against corruption and enhancing good governance, and strengthening intergovernmental relations, and clarifying once more roles and functions between political and administrative leadership. Lekgotla agreed that the debts owed by Eskom should be looked into. A distinction should be drawn between those who can afford to pay and those who are indigent. Lekgotla called upon those who can afford to pay for services to do so. And therefore, we have said government must look into this issue of Eskom debts and those who owe Eskom. If it is indigent people, we should actually make sure that we act responsibly, and indigents can never be able to pay. Cabinet through COGTA will intervene directly in municipalities through Section 139(7) of the Constitution in cases of persistent municipal dysfunctionality and failure by provinces to intervene decisively and effectively. It means here we are actually mandating and giving power to the Minister of COGTA to intervene directly where there are these challenges in terms of Section 139(7). Furthermore, the ANC will become more stringent in the selection processes for all public representatives. Lekgotla agreed that the implementation of the district model must be prioritized as a mechanism for government to serve the people better through coordinating district-based plans and budgets. And Lekgotla agreed that all departments across the three spheres must actively participate in the IDP's planning and ensure that their plans are part and are informed. And ANC structures must also play a role in ensuring that the masses of our people throughout South Africa are actively involved in the drafting of the IDPs. And we are also saying We will be spreading ministers, deputy ministers, MECs, NEC members, will deploy them across the country to become champions of this district model. Lekgotla agreed that the following actions must be prioritized. COGTA to establish national program, coordination unit and district hubs by the end of March. And COGTA and Treasury should also reinforce funding for maintenance of bulk infrastructure. We are calling upon government not to take money from projects which are not complete, but we are actually saying to government, when the project is not moving, get in, assist whatever municipality to finalize and implement that project rather than actually take money back to central government. And review all fiscal incentives, criteria of existing public employment programs and methodologies applied in government training programs. And redesign the community work program as well as expanded community works program to provide useful skills that empower participants to access jobs and business opportunities after exiting their program. And complete the profiling of the 49 municipalities, that is 42 district municipalities plus 7 metros between December and January 2020. This is work in progress. And reprioritize budget and programs to respond to the emerging challenges. And lastly, on the better Africa and better world, Lekgotla noted that the current global environment is characterized by increased insecurity and volatility as a result of the rise in right-wing nationalism, populism and unilateral trade measures and wars. We reaffirm the ANC commitment to multilateralism in the resolution of conflicts. The Lekgotla also noted that 18 years since chairing the inaugural session of the AU in 2002, South Africa will once again assume this important role at the helm of the AU. And noting that the theme of South Africa's chairperson of the AU is silencing the guns by 2020 and creating conducive conditions for Africa's development, Lekgotla agreed on the following priorities: strengthening compliance with conventional and non-conventional arms control regulation in pursuit of peace, stability, and development on the continent; strengthening economic diplomacy, as well as encourage African countries to accelerate the signature and ratification of the African Continental Free Trade Area and the declaration of 2020 to 2030 as the decade of Africa women financial inclusion by the AU, and focusing especially on women entrepreneurship; and step up national and continental mobilization efforts to raise awareness about and call for the eradication of gender-based violence and support for vulnerable groups, including the rights of the LGBTQI+ community on the continent, and the combating of xenophobia, racism, ethnic and gender discrimination, and all other intolerances, including the discrimination against and the killing of persons living with albinism; and solidarity and the strengthening of relations between the diaspora and the AU, and the use of the chairperson of African peer review mechanism to strengthen the APRM in order to preserve the trajectory of democracy and good governance on the continent. And furthermore, South Africa must use its seat on the United Security Council, amongst others, to strengthen the call for the reform of the transformation of the United Nations Security Council in line with the Isolani consensus. The Lekgotla agreed that the continued relations that South Africa has in a number of multilateral organizations, including BRICS, must be strengthened. And Lekgotla once more and the ANC affirmed the ANC commitment to one China policy, that there is only one China in the world, and the government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government representing the whole of China. The ANC reiterates our support for the oppressed people of Palestine, support for Sahrawi and their quest for self-determination, and confirm the resolution of the 54th National Conference on the support for the Kurdish people. And we once more want to talk about the inquest into the death of Neil Aggett. Furthermore, the NEC welcomed the opening of the inquest into the death of Neil Aggett in apartheid detention and expressed the hope that the Neil Aggett family and many other families will find closure. I think this is our statement, and we are going to allow the comrade Togo and comrade Lindy, because they will leave early, to respond to some of the questions which you may actually want to ask out of the statement. So focus on the statement.
No, thank you very much. Just to reiterate the point that the Secretary General has raised, and it has become a very good tradition, we stick on the statement. Any other issue outside the statement is not going to be entertained. Comrade Nomvola Mukonyan is also here. She's a member of the National Executive Committee and a member of the National Working Committee of the ANC. So we can start. We've got only 3 rounds of questions. We take the first one, second one, and then we close. Just make sure you introduce yourself, Bonolo. We start with you. Okay.
Thank you. It's Bono at FAM.
Maybe your voice is better.
Yeah, it's much better. It's fine. Thank you for taking my questions. This question to us. We have a minister, Owing, who has expressed his views about the future of SAA. The minister believes that the national carrier should be disbanded. The minister also believes that the ANC's resolution on the South African National Reserve Bank should not be repealed. So I just want to ask, is it helpful to have a sitting minister who does not believe in the resolutions of the ANC on critical SOEs such as South African Airways, as well as the South African Reserve Bank? I mean, is it helpful to have a minister who does not believe in the future of these particular institutions?
No, that's fine. Let's stick to the statement. The ANC is much bigger than its deployees. But let's continue. Let's go on. Yes, the SG will come and respond. Yes.
My question is,
And I'm sure you have listened to Comrade Tito this morning.
Yes. Because the ANC Lekgotla is bigger than deployees. But it's fine. Let's continue. Yes.
okay, Sbahle from Jacaranda FM. My question is also outside this statement, but just reaction from the minister about the downgrading of the land
Comrade
bank.
Chair of the ETC and the SG,
Yes, just
because
about
the Chair of the
Moody's-
ETC will be expected to speak about SAA and what we said.
Okay.
Yes.
So just the downgrading of the land bank by Moody's, just reaction from your side, Minister.
What question? Down.
Land bank.
Okay, Comrade Togo will deal with that. Did you introduce yourself? Sbahle from Jacaranda FM.
Lisa Gatandwa from News 24. I have 3 questions for this round. I wanted to ask, with regards to retaining SAA as a national asset, the ANC's NEC met with the business rescue practitioners. I'm just wondering if they had the same idea. Do they feel the same way that SAA is salvageable? The finance minister last year spoke about consolidating state-owned enterprises. That was in February. You come back a year later, you tell us that you are considering or you're still thinking about consolidating these state-owned enterprises. Why are you guys why are you moving at such a snail's pace to do so? The President also spoke about strengthening of EBEE, as well as Nawanobala. You've just spoken on it right now. I want to know, what are the major challenges on the BEE policy that needs strengthening?
Okay, Comrade Enoch, you will note those. We'll come this side. Take the first round this side. We come to the Lord. Yes, yes. No, we want to make sure that.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's Kenneth Mokatle from Sunday Independent. On COCTA, I had SG talking about giving more powers to the minister. And I wanted to ask, so much emphasis is being placed on the state-owned enterprises. While municipalities across the country are collapsing, people are not able to get water. We just saw what happened in Twatwa. The only notable intervention that we have been seeing, either from the MECs in different provinces, or from the ministry itself, or from the portfolio committee in the parliament, is to place the affected municipality under administration. And we haven't seen those administration giving us positive report. Instead, the situation in those municipalities are worsening. I'm speaking to you right now. Majority of the municipalities in the northwest are under administration. And today we are told that one municipality in Mogalakwena in Limpopo was just placed under administration around November, and the administrator just arrived now. It's supposed to be a big news, but we know that the situation is not going to change. What are you doing as the Minister of COCTA to ensure that people are at least receiving water? I don't think people are asking for a lot of things. They just want water. We've seen the protest in Twatwa. Thank you very much.
Okay, that belongs to Mama Nkosazana. Can we take this as the first round and then come back to the second one, which Samkelo will take the lead on? Okay. Comrade Enoch, Sistogo, and Mama Nkosazana.
I'm not going to take your question. It's beyond my pay grade. As to what happens to the ministers, beyond my pay grade. I'm going to talk about SAA. You will recall that SAA, the business, was put into business rescue by the board. As things stand, the National Executive Committee has agreed that SAA must be retained, but obviously with some restructuring that's taking place in a manner which is going to make sure that it's sustainably moving forward. And then we've then said, what are the operational challenges associated with that? The cabinet must do so. Our reaction to the land bank is simply the following. It's not an attack on the fundamentals of the bank. If you look at the downgrade by Moody's, centers around Moody's fear that given the fiscal constraints, there will probably not be support to the land bank. As things stand, the land bank does not need that support. So we're not worried that much because it has got nothing to do with the fundamentals of the bank. It has got to do with the possible lack of support from government. Insofar as consolidation of the state-owned enterprises, there's a lot of work which has been done to assess which institutions do what by National Treasury. What is going to be required now is to review that work. It's not that there's no work which is being done. It's to review that work and make sure that we can finalize the consolidation process. BE policy is a moving target. We started in 2000 with, from the ANC perspective, to clarify our position more effectively was in Stellenbosch in 2002, when we became first and foremost to be clearer in terms of where we go. Obviously, the policy is implemented from time to time. There are changing environment. There are things that is reviewed from time to time. Now, among other things, for instance, there's been an issue of fronting. That matter was attended in terms of the new legislation. But other challenges, for instance, and for me, which is a worrying issue, is if you say you are giving a BE and somebody is raising a loan as a BE, and the bank says we're going to give you only 60% of the funding,
40% must be skin in the game. What that means is that you as a BE person must go and find another 40%, assuming that the deal is 100 million. So the bank is giving you 60 million. There's another 40 million you must find, what they call your skin in the game. And it's in the nature of black people who don't have that balance sheet to be able to fund that. So we need to find creative ways. There will always be creative ways of finding how do we deal with our BE policies. It's a dynamic process. Thank you.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. Tito has answered to one part of the matters that relates to the downgrade. He has dealt with the issue of the liquidity, which is correct, that in terms of the liquidity, and you'll see in the statement of Moody's, they acknowledge that the liquidity of the bank is not in question. However, some of the issues that they were concerned about is the impact of climate change, particularly the drought. And they are concerned that this may impact the repayment levels and timeframes by farmers. Yes, we note that those are concerns, but we all appreciate that the issue of climate change has not only affected farmers that are getting loans from the land bank, but across the financial institution. Secondly, it also relates to the issue of the stability in the institution and the fact that it has taken time for the appointment of the CEO, and that is the matter that is being addressed. So from where we are concerned, one of the issues that the Lekgotla dealt with was how we position our development finance institutions to actually support the development mandate of government. Our concern has been that the profile of the debt book of the land bank has actually not quite changed its complexion nor its gender. So we would want to make sure as we work and support the bank that they align their mandate so that they can support emerging black farmers, women, and young people in particular, to make sure that the economic activity as well as the market share of black people in the agricultural economy is seen to be on the rise. So in that supporting of the bank, ensuring that we deal with the issues of the downgrade as we go forward, those are some of the matters in our view that will require attending to, as well as ensuring that we finalize the appointment of the CEO. Doing that, of course, as you know, that the bank is still managed by Treasury, working with the Minister of Finance to ensure that that does happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. On the question of municipalities, I'll come to Kwakwa last as a specific issue of water. But on the failure of municipalities, let me first say that the municipalities that are under 139 are 40 out of 257 municipalities. That is about 2% of the municipalities. So we cannot judge local government on the basis of the 40 only. The other municipalities are being supported by COGTA, by the province, by National Treasury. They are not under 139. So I think let's put that into perspective. Secondly, the local government is quite complex. The reasons for problems are varied. In some of the municipalities, it's the funding model that is a problem, in that there are small municipalities that do not have a revenue base from which to collect revenue for their spending, because the funding model assumes that all municipalities are able to collect revenue. And so we are discussing with Treasury to say that funding model must change. even in the Lekgotla, this was discussed, because those municipalities will never be able to raise revenue to implement their constitutional mandate. And that's why you'll find some of them will be given infrastructure funds, MEC, to build infrastructure. And they are not able to spend it because they don't have a planner, they don't have an engineer, they don't have the necessary professionals because they are too small, they can't pay those professionals. And even if they come, you'll find an inexperienced engineer who comes whilst they leave school waiting to get a proper job, and they will leave. So that's why we've now come to the district model as well, to say instead of that municipality fending for itself in terms of the professionals, let's make sure that in every district there are enough of these professionals who can then be shared by the municipalities in that district. And that's why we're talking about district hubs, where there are going to be these professionals, engineers, chartered accountants, planners, all the professionals that will be needed, which will then be shared by the municipalities, because we may not be able at this point in time, and with the financial situation in the country, to be able to put those professionals in all 256 municipalities. But we should try and put them in the 52 districts. The metros, on the whole, do have those, the 44 districts, so that they can then be shared by the municipalities. Secondly, some of the problems in the municipalities are because the clarification of roles is not, and that's why the statement talks about continued clarification of roles between the executive, the political, and the administrative leadership in a municipality, so that the political leadership does its oversight without interfering in the operational issues. But at the same time, the administration knows that it's supposed to implement operationally, but not go out and make statements and address communities against mayors or mayors interfering into in the administration. So that is one set of issues that is creating problems. And we are saying that must, and we have to work with the ANC and other political parties in terms of making sure that those kind of roles are clarified, but also the infighting that the SG talked about, sometimes even leading to killings, is another set of issues that create problems in the municipalities. And those, the ANC and other political parties will have to deal with. And of course, also the selection of public representatives must be in line with what they are expected to do. So there must be a very stringent way of appointing and deploying according to what that public representative is supposed to perform in the deployment area. Then the other set of problems is that if you look at some of the complaints, is that there is deteriorating services. Why are there deteriorating services? Because the maintenance of the aging infrastructure is not carried out. Part of the reason is that there is no ring fencing of maintenance budget. You get given an infrastructure budget, but it specifies what we can do with it, and maintenance is not one of them. And that's one of the things that we are saying, there has to be a maintenance budget, because even if your infrastructure is new, if you don't maintain it, it's going to ground to a halt. So those are the issues, but we are addressing them. As I say, we are saying we must ring fence the maintenance for infrastructure. But also, the infrastructure itself is aging. So there needs to be money to build new infrastructure, and you can see that the economy will not allow us to have huge amounts of money to build new infrastructure. So we have to maintain the existing infrastructure. The other set of complications in local government, if you take the metros have not really expanded in terms of the bulk infrastructure. The cities themselves have not really expanded. But people are coming to the city. Urbanization is very fast and is not matched by the growth of infrastructure in the cities. That's why you'll find a housing backlog, you'll find water, electricity backlogs. Because people in the rural areas want to go to the cities, they don't plan with the city to say we're coming, they are going. And the infrastructure there is not sufficient. So those are the issues. But government as a whole is trying to deal with those issues. And so that's why all the issues that you can see in the statement are there. And the district model also allows us to work together, because government has been working in silos. If you are water, you work alone. If you are COGTA, you work alone. Land, you work alone. But life and people out there are not experiencing life in silos. So the district model allows us, like the other day, we had a joint MINMEC with water, with the Department of Human Settlement, water and sanitation. Because the issues that affect local government, some of them are located in that department. And if we don't work together, then we won't solve the problems. And we're working with agriculture, because with land affairs, for instance, and rural development, because those issues affect people and we must work together. So it allows us to work with all ministers. Yesterday we had discussions with Minister of Tourism on how to assist in the districts. So the district model is not a panacea for everything, but it allows us to be able to work together as government, both horizontally at national government, but also vertically in the three spheres of government. And that's why the SG also said that all three spheres must participate in the IDPs of local government. Because up to now, we haven't really been participating sufficiently as the national government, not COGTA, but generally, including COGTA, but all departments. Because the IDPs at local government must have the aspirations of the people, but also must have a budget that will go into them, that will come nationally, but all the plans of government must speak to the district IDPs. And so the implementation must be collective. So it's not, as I said in Parliament, fixing local government is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and we're ready, we're running the marathon. Thank you. Oh, sorry. On Kwakwa, besides its general problems that are general for municipalities, and it's one of the municipalities that is under 139. But what has been acute now is the fact that the drought has been very persistent. There is no rain in Kwakwa, the dam is now dry. And when people open the taps, just water that has now got silt in it is coming out. But there are lots of boreholes that have been built. There are tankers that are also delivering water. But the fact that the dam is dry is creating a big problem there. Water Affairs and MISA engineers have been there. They are looking at alternatives besides the tankers and the boreholes. They are also looking at other alternatives, whether there is water coming from Lesotho or coming from where, but looking at where can we get alternative water whilst there is a drought there. And also the Free State itself has now declared the province as a drought. So it will also assist for national to help. The Deputy Minister of Water Affairs, the Minister of Culture, today will be in Qwaqwa, working with the teams that are already there to see how we can accelerate this acute problem of water there caused by an empty dam. So that's the problem of Qwaqwa. And that is why also in other provinces, we are encouraging them where there is persistent drought to actually declare it as a drought and as a disaster there so that even national can come and assist. So because we're working together, as I say, that's why COGTA, Water Affairs are going to be there today in Qwaqwa. But the engineers of MISA and Water Affairs have already been there trying to find alternative ways of getting water into Qwaqwa because boreholes and tankers are not sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mama Indizet, and to all comrades that helped deal with your questions. Okay, let's take the second round. Comrade Ntate Samkelo. Please, Ega, you don't want us to first take new hands, and then when we have space.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mavi. Let's first address the elephant in the room. We as the media are not very pleased with the late coming. We understand that there are reasons behind it, but in future, just to be honest, we will not sit and wait for you. We've worked out in other provinces, and it will look unfair to others if we give you special treatment. So it's a courtesy, notice.
Yes.
Others have walked out. Mamlindi had to stop them.
No, thank you, Samkelo.
But the question...
But you are talking for all media houses,
yes,
or
all
for
media,
SABC?
All of us.
Okay.
No,
but you are from SABC.
was,
no, that's fine. Your point
I was
is
anointed by the DSG as the Lord. So
your point is noted. We firmly apologize. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay.
And we hope that you accept our apology.
No, thank you. Okay, the question will be, firstly, on foreign affairs, may the chair of international relations please clarify the ANC policy on the One China for All. There seems to be two voices coming from the ANC, and it's very confusing. What's the ANC position on that particular matter? And on the issue of state-owned enterprises, can you please just give us clarity on the ANC position on the One China for All policy? Where does the governing party sit on this particular matter? And then on the issue of state-owned enterprises, what is the ANC effectively going to do to make sure that these state-owned enterprises are run in a proper manner? For instance, you speak of a turnaround strategy for SAA. What methods will you be employing through the government, of course, to make sure that these state-owned enterprises are afoot? And when it comes to Eskom, what were the deliberations, particularly on the performance on the energy generation part, which is the core business of Eskom? How are you going to make sure that energy is done and there's energy security in the country and there's proper maintenance on this issue? Because we've been using the same excuse of maintenance over the years, but effectively maintenance is not done in a proper manner. Thank you.
Okay, that's Comrade Enoch. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Govan. I'm from ENCA. On SOEs, Mr. Kodongwana, there's a report in the Business Day which cites the Commission report on SOEs saying that the ANC plans to approve municipalities buying power directly from IPPs. It also says that the ANC wants to approve letting business generate their own power. Are these the decisions of the ANC, NEC Lekgotla, or not, for clarity? And then if it is the case, where do you envision the municipalities receiving the money from to buy from IPPs? And then when can businesses expect that to happen? Then if I could find out what the ANC's view is on the intention of the Lesotho Prime Minister to retire, and the intention of the Lesotho Police to call in the Prime Minister for questioning. As I understand, South Africa does have a special envoy to Lesotho. I see that in the statement the ANC expresses its support of the Kurdish people. Is that the ANC supporting the Kurdish people's intention or attempt to have their own state declared? Could you clarify what that support is? And then the President, Pule, had said that the ANC intends to introduce qualifications criteria for its councillors and people who would be elected onto ANC lists. Will that apply before the 2021 elections? And could you tell us what the criteria would be if it has been finalized? Thank you.
Oh, that's fine. The SG will deal with the Lesotho question. Okay, Mbali.
Bali from Newsroom Africa. I just want to find out, you've spoken about Eskom, saying that debts owed to Eskom needs to be looked into. We have the likes of Soweto, which you have been trying to deal with for quite some time now. How will you ensure that those debts owed to Eskom will be paid? I mean, they've even asked for things like a flat rate when it comes to electricity. Are you willing to entertain this? There was also another issue coming out of your Lekgotla. You have prioritized issues around sexual harassment in the workplace. We've seen your spokesperson from the ANC task team going to Facebook, talking about her dress code at the Lekgotla. Has the ANC apologized and reached out to her in that respect? And will those who insulted her also be dealt with a disciplinary? Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Or Lizega, you can just, because the mic is just next to you. Ears are lap. And then...
Just to add on to, Lizega again from News 24, just to add on to Govan's question on cadre deployment, I wanted to know these, because the President speaks about poorly qualified individuals who are being parachuted in positions by virtue of their lineage to politics, to political leaders. I just wanted to know are you scrapping the cadre deployment altogether? In terms of SOEs, in this document, there's a lot of this word keeps coming back, keeps coming up and up again. It's restructuring. In my mind, as a layman, restructuring means retrenchments. Can you just clarify what exactly? Because just to allay our fears and panic, what does this restructuring entail exactly? And also, the President, during his closing remarks, because this is an expansion of his address, we have to go back to it. The President spoke about unity. I mean, this is something you've been drilling, unity, but it seems it's not resonating with your audience, your members. I'm trying to figure out how we can trust the ANC to go to their investors, to convince people of the country if they can't even convince their own members of this unity project.
Okay. Citizen.
Yeah, this is Eric Naki from the Citizen. First of all, I must make it clear that what Samkelo raised about your late coming, we concur with that, all of us, because really what happened there should not be seen as just something from Samkelo, it's all of us. It's not SABC, it's not his thing. In future, we will walk out of here. Coming to what is being discussed here today, my first question has been asked by Mbali about Soweto, but maybe to add to that, there are other municipalities that are small and even poorer than Soweto. Seeing that there is this tendency to cancel Soweto debt, what about those municipalities that are even poorer, where residents are owing money to the municipalities? There are many municipalities where residents are owing, but they still have to pay. My second question is around Eskom debt. There are government departments, a long list of government departments that are owing the municipalities. That has been the complaint of SALGA over a long period of time, that these municipalities and the private sector are not paying. What are you doing about those departments that are not paying? How long will it take for you to wait for them?
Our apology once more. We apologize to everyone, not just to the SABC. And we'll make sure that we improve on the question of time management going forward.
Thank you very much, Puleng. Kulula Kongana from Bloomberg News. Mine is also... Can I continue? Okay. Kulula Kungana from Bloomberg News. I'm also piggybacking on Govan's question on the IPPs to the effect that we understand just through the Business Day report that the ANC backed a plan to use more IPPs to augment for electricity shortages. If this is true and you do confirm it, when can we see this translated into policy? This is just adding on to Govan's question, and maybe I should have asked this first. You say that there were detailed inputs, right, with specific proposals to improve performance of SOEs, and I will be asking in particular to Eskom. Can you just give us some of those specific proposals to improve performance? And maybe this additional, adding on the IPPs might just come up in one of those. Thank you.
Yes? Mark?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Abongile Tumago, SABC News. My question is directed to you, Ms. Zulu. On the international front, I wonder what is the ANC government and the ANC itself going to do to try and intervene on what's happening in Libya? We see that troops are being denied access in that country in a means to sort of try and get to the bottom of those developments we see happening in that part of the world. Thank you.
So we are releasing Sistogo. There's no question on land. It looks like it's Eskom debts, SOEs. Okay. Okay, Sister. Yeah, before Sislindi comes in, just to clarify, we have already conveyed our apology to CISO, and that the ANC doesn't have a policy that bars people on the kind of dress code that they must put on, and that we've got a platform that allows all of our comrades to be able to express themselves. We have met with her, the SG and the DSG have spoken to her, and we have ensured that those that would have been party to this are also addressed. So that matter is closed. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Program Director. The first question is with regard to One China policy, and we would like, as the African National Congress, to state it very clearly that there's only one sovereign state under China.
and that if there's any other voice that's coming from anywhere within the African National Congress, that's our internal issue to deal with an appreciation and an understanding. The principle of the African National Congress has not changed, and if there are other voices, I guess we'll have to deal with those voices. The issue of Lesotho, as indicated, the SG is going to deal with the issue of Lesotho. And then the third issue is with regard to the Kurdish people. We have in almost all our conference resolutions as the African National Congress indicated that first and foremost, the most important thing for us is to find peaceful solutions to conflict. And therefore, when there's armed conflict, we come in any avenue that we can, utilizing international platforms, but also utilizing our bilateral relations, because in this particular case, when it comes to the Kurdish people, we're not only talking to the Kurdish people in supporting them in their call for their rights, we are also engaging the government of Turkey, because it must also be understood that the African National Congress in government has the bilateral relations with Turkey. And as a matter of fact, even in the last meeting that we had here with Turkey from a point of view of the ANC party-to-party relations, we strongly raised the issue and we confirmed our continued support for the Kurdish people and their rights. As to whether it's an issue of supporting them in terms of secession, if you might call it that, or something, that is something that has to be discussed between us and them, because there's not only one a grouping in itself. There's quite a number of groupings, and therefore the most principled statement that we can make as an organization is the support to end the conflict between the Turkish people and the Kurdish people in Turkey. With regard to Libya, we are concerned, obviously, and we make the statement that as we are going to be chairing the African Union, we will use that opportunity as South Africa to not only engage with the warring factions in Libya itself, but also to use the structures within the AU that speak to issues of peace, security, and stability, because we would like to see peace and stability in Libya. We also would like to use the same vehicle chairing the AU to engage with the United Nations and see how far we can be able to find, to support the peace process in Libya. It's not as easy as that. It's a very complicated situation, but we move from a principal point that says peace in Africa should be at the center of the tenure of South Africa as the AU chair. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I know that some of the media houses are raising a problem with our sound system. I've asked the guys to make sure that they fix that, so that there is because they are complaining that the sound is not audible, especially when they ask questions. So if we can fix that.
How would we make sure that these institutions are better run, I think, or are run in a proper manner? I think what we did for the whole day, we did an assessment of how we've been running these institutions. And the starting point was our policy framework. What is our policy framework from the party's perspective, from ready to govern to date? And we explored what is the policy framework from government. And clearly, among other things, the government set up what was called the Presidential Review Commission, which looked into detail into some of these things. And some of those documents identified weaknesses in the system. Identify weaknesses in the system. Part of the discussion we've had over the weekend is, having identified those weaknesses in the system, what are the key approaches we need to be taking? For instance, on the recruitment of boards, on the recruitment of CEOs, what is the skills profile that we need to achieve? Those are attempts to begin to grapple with that question. In terms of energy security, there are two related questions, that gentleman from Bloomberg and somebody else this side. in terms of energy security. The first thing you need to do, we need to talk about, Eskom has got challenges. Among the challenges that have been read in the statement, but in addition to that, most of Eskom's fleet is old. Okay? So it requires sufficient time for maintenance. What are the implications of that? If you are likely to do proper maintenance, you've got to shut them down. And that has got implications for load shedding. So what we're trying to grapple with is how to make sure that we give enough space for Eskom to be able to do the maintenance. But to achieve that, we need to bring emergency measures where we can bring additional capacity of electricity. And I think that's what the resolution is saying. And that is what the Department of Energy have done. They've issued a request for information which closes by the 31st of January this year. The intention is to make sure that we can bring sufficient capacity so that we should be able to give Eskom space to do the maintenance. That's what we're trying to do. In terms of IPPs, it's not something new. You'll recall the energy white paper, which was developed in 1998, talked about government and private sector participation in this space. So IPPs are a manifestation of that. I'm sure, given the complexity we're having now, they will play a critical role. Insofar as self-generation and municipality, the formulation in the resolution of says, and I quote, regulations should be eased to allow increased level of self-generation in the economy, and for municipalities in good financial standing to procure their own power, close quote. So I'm trying to answer somebody who was asking this issue about municipalities. So in that sense, there's saying we must ease the regulation. That's what Lekgotla have said. We must ease the regulation to allow for that to happen. Does restructuring means retrenchment? It doesn't follow. It doesn't follow. Let me just give you an example in the electricity sector. When you say you must separate generation and transmission, you are not necessarily saying I'm cutting jobs, but you are restructuring the industry. We are restructuring the industry, but you're not saying you are cutting jobs. What we are saying is that transmission must be available to everybody on a non-discriminatory basis. So for you are separating generation to be owned by Eskom so that all other generators must have equal access to the transmission. That's restructuring. But it does not necessarily mean by doing that you are is retrenchment. So it does not follow, that's what I'm saying. It may well, in certain circumstances, restructuring may lead to retrenchment, not in every case. So these things are not equal. I think I've dealt with the three questions that.
No, thanks, Butinok. I'm sure we have sufficiently dealt with all the questions, unless there is a completely different question to the ones that have been asked. The criteria of councillors, Soweto. That's fine. The chief custodian of ANC resolutions, the Secretary General, is here. He's also going to speak and take the last bite. You don't want to allow others because they also seem to be representing media institutions? Let's check. Yeah, just to, okay. No. Yeah.
My name is Opa Maleka from Grace Radio. I just have two related questions. The one relates to point 6, where it says the SG mentioned that they will investigate all historical contracts and also evergreen contracts that negatively impacts on SAA and I suppose also on Eskom as well. And secondly, point number 10, where you say that SAA will be retained as a national airline that will require substantial restructuring. Does it also mean that they will continue, the government will continue with the bailout of SAA?
Okay. Gavin? There was a question that had to do with 139. Did someone ask about 139 and ministerial powers as it relates to that? Or did we hear? Oh, she answered that. Okay. No, that's fine. Okay, Gavin. Lizega says it ngama questions. Send the nje. Aksana next from News 24.
Okay, thank you. It's Govin again from ENCA. Telkom is given notice to its workers, to the union, that it intends to retrench 3,000 workers. It's in a meeting today with the Communication Workers Union, Telkom, and the Communication Workers Union. Look, CWU has said that they believe the ANC should intervene here to stop those retrenchments from happening. What's the ANC's view on this action by Telkom?
Okay, comrades, are these questions that you always had, or you had this question? Okay, that's fine. You will come and then.
I see that. You are likely to jump our questions.
Yes.
There was a question that was asked by Mbali about.
Yes, no, I did say the SG is going
Yes.
to answer.
And then there's a question about government departments that are owing municipalities
Correct.
in terms of electricity.
Yes. The
Yeah,
SG is
what are you doing about
But the SG is going to answer. The SG has not spoken. Everyone has answered. The Secretary General has not spoken. When he takes the last bite, he will deal with all the other questions that shall not have been answered. Mama Nkosazana will clarify 1397. Comrade Dakota wanted to take a bite on some issues as well. And then Comrade Enoch and the SG would conclude. Does that help? Okay.
Yeah.
We are committed to answer all your questions.
Yeah, thank you.
No, there is
Yeah. Another question. Thank you, Bule. It's just a minor point of clarity. In terms of the Lekgotla having endorsed the recommendation that the power to determine issues related to land expropriation should reside in the executive.
You know, when the eyes go down,
Yeah.
you don't hear your voice
Yeah.
because.
Yeah, just a point of interpretation. When you use the word issues to determine issues, does that include the power to determine the quantum, or in other words, the amount of land expropriation without compensation? I just wanted to get that point of clarity. When you say issues.
On the land expropriation.
Yes. Does that also include the quantum, the amount? Thank you.
That's fine. Comrade Enoch, and then Mama Nkosazana, Dakota.
Yeah, let me start with that one. Let me start with, well, our position is that we must simplify expropriation, right? We must simplify expropriation. The decision to expropriate land without compensation must remain with the executive so that we don't have long processes of expropriation. Doesn't happen in any other country. It may well be that an individual whose land or property has been expropriated is aggrieved. In those circumstances where constitutional democracy, that individual can take the executive decision for review. That's precisely the point we're making. So, insofar as these evergreen contracts, we must contextualize them. If you read, there's a message we're carrying out throughout the state-owned enterprise that we need to review their efficiency and their operating, including the cost. Among other things, is to review, when you review the cost, you must review also the contracts. To what extent are they a burden on the institution? That's part of that evaluation. Of course, that's an operational division for government. We are saying to government, you must also do that. Insofar as SAA, we're not talking bailout. We've not said so. We have said, and I make this point, we have said that restructured SAA we need a restructured SAA but retain its national status, as national airline status. Now, that's what the first decision we've said. The second decision we've said, government must look into the operational requirements of that and the operations. I know government is working hard to achieve that objective. And I think in the next few days or week, an appropriate announcement will be made. And I don't think we're qualified to make the announcement on behalf of government.
Okay. Thank you. On the question of government owing the municipalities, it's true. Government does owe municipalities, and we have agreed that the government must pay, especially public works is the biggest one that owes a lot, but other departments as well. As whoever owes must pay, including Eskom must also pay where it owes, because Eskom also owes. So it's not just the citizens that must pay, the government departments must pay, Eskom must also pay what it may owe to other people. Now the question of whether, when we talk about payment and indigent people are all over. Whether it's in Soweto, whether it's in small municipalities, they are all over the country. But also those who can pay are all over. Even in small places, there are some who can pay. Then on the question of 139, I think let me just clarify. 139 has many sections. The one that has been used quite a lot is the one that is implemented by provinces. And it's 139A, 139 1B, 139C. 1A is where the province then starts giving directives to the municipality. If that fails, they go to B when they take over and put an administrator. But what we have realized is that putting one person in an environment that is difficult and not working sometimes doesn't work. So it's important to send a team. So we're asking provinces now to not just send one person, but a team that can assist to also change the system so that when they leave a system that works. The last resort where you've tried and also you find that council is part of the problem, then you go to C, where you dissolve and you have a new election like we've just had in Mamusa. But there are also, Treasury can also intervene. Treasury has just intervened in Mangaung on section 139.5, where there are issues that are strictly financial. But even though it's Treasury that has intervened, we've agreed that we must work together, even with COGTA National, work with them. We also send a team rather than just somebody from Treasury. The intervention that has not really been used much is 139.7, where it's actually the national that intervenes directly into a municipality. And that's the one that is in the statement, where the Lekgotla has said that national should intervene directly in municipalities when there is persistent problems and maybe the province is not taking sufficient action, or the province is saying they've tried and it's not working. So that's the one that hasn't been used much, but now the Lekgotla has said maybe we should not wait for too long for the provinces if the problems persist and there needs to be an intervention. So I think I've tried to clarify the issue of 139. But also the diagnosis about what is wrong is very important, because if the province doesn't diagnose properly what is wrong, they may bring an intervention that is not going to resolve the problem. If what is wrong is the fighting, then it doesn't matter how many administrators you bring in. It's not going to resolve the problem. So the diagnosis is important, and then the intervention must match the diagnosis, what is wrong. Sometimes we misdiagnose or put an intervention that does not speak to the actual challenge. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Comrade Pule and the entire team. I'll just speak on the matter of whether we have abandoned our cadre deployment policy. Yeah, so far, the issue related to the cadre deployment policy, it's a directive of conference, a conference resolution of 1997 in Mahikeng, that amongst ourselves and citizens of our country, we shall deploy members who are loyal, but also who have the necessary skills capacity to can drive all the objectives of a developmental state, all the resolutions of conference and manifestos as set out from time to time by the organization. So we are not abandoning our cadre deployment policy. What we are saying is that in some instances, we must acknowledge that there has been a failure in terms of deploying the necessary and relevant skills to the relevant position. And as a result of that, we have undermined our capacity to deliver on our mandate. So instead of some of us going the route of a body story, then looking at merits, is that it's important that we look at merits and try to ensure that we get the relevant skills for the relevant jobs. That's why we are saying fit for purpose in our statements. So that is exactly the point. So the issue of cadre deployment is not necessarily, it's only is used skewedly for against the ANC. But everywhere in the world, any governing party choose amongst the best citizens of its country and its descendants amongst itself, even members, who can best place to ensure that objectives and ideals of that particular government of the day are driven. Even in the Western Cape, I mean, you would know, even the DA there has deployed some of its people who were part of the ANC, from Advocate Wallace Mgoqi, became the first victims of the DA rule when they took over the Cape Town Metro. They brought in their own people, and so far, we have not complained. It's only that what we need to do is to jack up the issue of ensuring that we deliver sustainable services to our people. On the issue of whether BE has challenges, we must admit it does have challenges, and we need to improve on it. Like Comrade Enoch has said, it's a process. Because even up until today, in terms of the ownership patterns of the economy, we still have a challenge wherein less than 10%
of our citizens in this country own more than 90% of the economy, and the rest of the other 90% are dependent on the 10% which runs the economy. Now, that is not sustainable for any growth or development. For instance, we can make an example. In South Africa, we are 57 million. Only 6 million of us are tax paying. The rest of the other 51 million must depend on the 6 million for revenue of the state. It's not sustainable for the long term if you take into account that in the last third quarter and fourth quarter of the year, including the current first quarter, we have not done well. We're being on an equilibrium at a zero level, and projections are that we may not even grow more than 1% of the economy. Now, out of the 6 million, they must carry 51 million. Out of that 51 million, 10 million is unemployed, 17 million is on social grants. I mean, if you look at it for the next 5 to 10 years, it may not be sustainable based on the fact that our economy is also not performing better. So it's going to be important that we look at how we de-rationalize our economy, to look at how we ensure that our economy is inclusive and is beneficial to the rest of the citizens. And we don't have a majority which is dependable on the minority in terms of revenue enhancement and in terms of South African revenue services making a collection. So we need to broaden the space so that we can grow the potential of our economy, but at the same time, we can save enough to provide for our social amenities and all objectives that we have set for ourselves. So I think it's going to be important for all of us to be considerate that with the challenges that we have, we'll have to expand the mandate of the broad-based black economic empowerment as part of ensuring that we de-rationalize our economy. Thank you, Ezio.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure they have responded to all the questions. Maybe you just want me to emphasize certain points. Like, if you go to our January 8th statement in page 14, the issue of BE is covered. It says this requires that the ANC works with all sectors of society to change the structure of the economy, to allow for broader participation by black people, women and youth, and those in rural areas. And therefore, we must build an inclusive economy that allows everyone to prosper. And hence, we talk about the radical socio-economic transformation of South Africa. It's an ANC position, policy position, and we are actually encouraging all of us, wherever we are, including society, including business, to ensure that the economy does not just benefit the few. And on page 11, page 16, we have reiterated our resolution on the Reserve Bank. We are on one. There's no individual who is outside that position of the conference, of all conference. This is also here in the January 8th statement. And in page 11, we talk about SAA, and we say the fact that South African Airways has been put under business rescue to enable it to be restructured and return to financial sustainability is a demonstration both of the depth of the crisis and the determination of our government to decisively address this matter. And hence, Comrade Tito Mboweni this morning was saying, government is actually dealing with this matter, trying to find money to address this matter, because we have agreed we are and we must retain a restructured SAA. So we will be still flying the South African flag. And therefore, a government will then deal with details. That is our position. And we have all agreed. Comrade Tito Mboweni was part of the meeting when we take resolutions, and everybody, any member has a right to express his or her views in the African National Congress. But the views of members of the African National Congress are actually engaged, and the African National Congress as an organization takes decisions. If you are a member of an organization, you abide by the resolutions of the organization. More so, when these resolutions are resolutions of the National Executive Committee in between conferences, and the highest decision-making body, you know, is the National Conference. So all of us will implement and move on. The issue of unity is not an issue of the president, it's the issue of every member of the African National Congress. Of course, we'll repeat it from time to time because you don't build unity over a month or two. You build unity as a process. We're not talking artificial here. We're talking about a process, and I think in the ANC, it is a program which is there, and it is actually working as we move forward. So it's work on progress. Eskom debts, I think Menko Sazan have responded to that. You must remember even Eskom owes certain municipalities. So we are calling to everybody to ensure that there is payment for what you actually get. So those who owe Eskom, municipalities which are non-viable, we are saying national must look into the national fiscus to address challenges of certain municipalities with no tax base. Because you can do whatever. You can go to small municipalities where there is no tax base, where there is unemployment, where there is poverty. There is no way you can force them to pay because nobody there, and maybe we should go back to stats of, in terms of people who are getting social grants, where do they come from, where do they live? And that's why we are making a plea and a call to those who know that they can afford, not to hide behind those who have not. People must actually take responsibility as all South Africans. So the ANC believes in a better world and a better future. We have stated this many times in the Freedom Charter. We have actually talked about the better world and friendship. And we believe in one thing, sovereignty of every country. Lesotho is a country on its own, Libya is a country on its own. And we believe that the people of those countries will resolve their own challenges. And where we are needed to assist, we always come on board. Where the AU shall have to play a role, the AU will do so. But we respect the sovereignty of each and every country. We believe that people can find their own solutions. So Lesotho, we will support them as they move on. The people of Libya, there are platforms where there is this engagement, and we are just encouraging dialogue across the globe for peaceful resolution of problems and challenges facing whoever is there. And when we talk about investigating this and that, we are saying corruption is corruption. It has no color. Whether it's corruption by business, whether it's corruption by individuals, it has no color. And that's why people start talking now about corporate capture. Because we are actually saying capture is capture. If you say there is capture, if there is corruption, it knows no color. And we are actually saying all the wrongs which are there in society, in government, in business, must not be allowed. And we believe in people. And that's why we are saying to all the people of South Africa and various municipalities, including the people of Maluti, Apofu, together, we can't solve these problems on our own. We work with our people, and together we can actually do this. So there is no need for anybody to agitate. There are natural causes. It's not only Kwakwa affected, and we are calling upon our people to work with government. As the minister have said, the deputy ministers are already in Kwakwa. Tomorrow, the minister of water and sanitation, Comrade Lindiwe Sisulu, will be there. And we are saying to everybody from municipality and people, society there and elsewhere to find solutions. And we will find solutions because we believe in real working together. In terms of retrenchments, obviously you know that the ANC has always discouraged retrenchments. We see it throughout globally. The companies are retrenching, whether it's Massmart, whether it's Telkom, whether it's... So we are actually resolving, and we have resolved that we must allow engagement, and we are calling upon public sector as well as private sector to deal with these matters sensitively and responsibly, because indeed we face challenges. Deployment has been our, and we have always, if you look at our deployment guidelines, we have talked about people in the Freedom Charter married, and the guidelines, we are not deploying members of the ANC. There are people who are not members of the ANC, they are professionals, they are people, and don't create a picture that members of the ANC, there are no members of the ANC who are highly educated, who are part of the intelligentsia, who are academics. They are there because the ANC is all over. They are qualified, they are competent, they must be regarded and taken into consideration as South Africans. But merit, as we have said in the Freedom Charter, should be what actually guides us, be it boards, be it anywhere. So I'm sure, comrades, we have responded to all the questions. Unity, Telkom, Comrade Tito's views. Comrade Tito is part of the National Executive Committee. Once the National Executive Committee takes decision, all of us toe the line. When the National Conference takes decision, all of us takes the line. You'll have a chance in the next conference. If you want to change any decision, you shall have to convince the brains, the collective brains coming together, because we don't believe in individualism. We believe in collectivism as the African National Congress. But we believe that individuals do have views, but their views, if you're a member of the ANC, your views are subjected to the views of all of us, and ultimately we arrive. So we're still making a call to all South Africans to act responsibly, including yourselves, to give courage to society, and let's make sure that we start the year with a positive note. Let's agitate our people into action to determine their own destiny with the assistance of government. I'm sure we have responded to some of your concerns and worries. No privatization is our policy, and we'll make sure that everybody sticks to our policy positions as the African National Congress.
Okay, thank you very much, Secretary General. Once more, our apologies to all of you for the late start. We'll make sure that going forward, we do our best to stick to time. We've already distributed the copy of the statement across all our platforms. Once more, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of the briefing.
But next time, Samkelo must not also come late, okay?
Re a leboga.